Spring has sprung, and tomatoes might be the first thing on a gardener's mind at this time of the year. Definitely here in California, it's approaching the season where I would ordinarily begin to put tomatoes in the ground in this climate. So, because of our generally cool weather this close to the ocean, we actually put tomatoes in later than a lot of people will, further away from the ocean where the weather's not nearly as mild in the winter. It just doesn't warm up quick here. Typically, I figure about the middle of April is the right time in this area, but we're faced with the current dilemma, which is not enough water in the soil to be able to grow a good crop of tomatoes this year. And so, because of the drought, the last couple of years in a row, I have been putting my tomatoes out earlier just to be able to get the benefit of the rainfall that came in the winter. In order to do this, I need to be able to use varieties of tomatoes that are rather disease resistant, because if a tomato is going to succumb to a disease, it will happen during cold weather when the plant is somewhat stunted. The other is that I have to use some kind of a covering over the plants in order to warm up the soil. And so right here next to me, I have my current tomato planting project to show you. Right down here along the southwest wall of my house, where things get really nice and warm during the afternoon hours, I've got this little Quonset hut built using wire that's used for lacing together chain link fences as the hoops, although in the past I've also used apple branches woven together as hoops. I have Agribon 15 over the top of the planting, which is a floating row cover. It's an extruded polyester plastic. It ventilates, air goes through it, light goes through it, water goes right through it. So the stuff doesn't have to be taken off of the plants during the daytime to prevent overheating like a sheet of poly would. It also keeps off pests, and so if there's any birds out there, for instance, that want to peck away at my tomato plants, they aren't going to be able to get inside there, hopefully. So let me give you a little bit closer look at this assembly. So I've used an old redwood 4x4 here as an edger up against the lawn. Then right here I've taken the wire hoops and I've stuck them in the ground on both ends. So you can see here I'm using spring clip clothespins, both the plastic and the wooden ones, to be able to hold everything together. Over here, the end of the tunnel is pinned down by some bricks. It's all pretty simple stuff. Taking a peek underneath the tunnel here, you see that I've got some tomato plants. I got some little marigold plants installed over here. So this is a row of determinate tomatoes, one of my introductions. And it's also a row of large marigolds. I have a little bit of lettuce and a couple green onions stuck in the back over there. Basically, I just worked some compost and a little organic fertilizer into the soil here. Stuck the wire hoops in, threw the row cover over the top after the plants were stuck in place, pinned it all together with clothespins. You see over there on the far end, I've got another one of these built right along the wall of the house. So we're basically putting in determinate tomatoes and marigolds all the way down the south wall. So when planting tomatoes early, make sure you choose a disease-resistant variety. Do not plant the tomatoes too deep in early spring. A lot of people putting tomatoes out late like to dig a great big hole and put that stem deep. If you're doing an early planting, don't do that, because the temperature way down deep in the soil can be really much colder than the surface. Look for a place in your landscape where you have a better microclimate. All along the southwest wall of this house is not only sheltered from cold winds, but this wall of the house warms up above any other wall. And so the soil right next to this wall is also a few degrees warmer, and we can get going earlier. So locating that warmer spot, if you have any soils in the yard that are a little bit lighter than in other locations, look at that, because a light soil tends to warm up quicker in the spring than a heavy soil does. Create some kind of a cover protection from weather. Last night here the weather was in the 40s, and that's pretty cool for tomatoes. It won't kill them off, but it sure slows them down, and when it slows them down, diseases can attack, and you're going to have less than a beautiful crop if your tomatoes get sick first thing in the spring. This is the important issue about planting too early: disease susceptibility. using plants that resist disease is a real good idea. Using places where the microclimate is better, like along the wall of the house here. Also creating these covers over the plants to protect them at night. If you're using plain sheet plastic, the clear poly, which I have used before, this works, but you have to open the ends of the tubes during the daytime. Alright, so you have to figure out some way to ventilate this. Otherwise, it turns into a solar oven. You cook everything on the inside. I like to use the floating row cover myself because it keeps my mind off of it. I don't have to worry about the tubes because they're not going to overheat when the sun sits right on them. The heat escapes through this stuff to some extent. So kind of self-regulating material. I like it a lot. Also, again, I have problems with the birds wanting to eat everything. Chirp, chirp your ass. And this helps keep the birds off too. So, happy gardening. Tomatoes, one of the world's favorite garden crops. It's time to get thinking about getting the garden soil ready to put them in almost anywhere in the United States, and probably a good part of Northern Europe too. People are looking at that tomato package and thinking about doing it. Here in California, they are actively putting tomatoes in the ground already, right here in the Bay Area, despite the fact that the temperature is too cold for it. People just can't wait. They're chomping at the bit for that fresh, delicious salad tomato out of the garden. Happy gardening. Thanks for watching.